Hi, this is the fellow passenger speaking, and this is part 2 of generating beats or generative beats, making generative music in Ableton. In the previous episode, we were looking at how you can generate your own patterns or randomize your patterns to create interesting results. Great for crazy IDM, but also you can dial it all back and make it as vanilla and structured as you like. In this episode, we are going to look at taking that to the next step, building on what we did in the last video, but now we are going to look at adding a bigger range of sounds to it. And I have to say that every time I do this, I'm amazed how different the results turn out, and also how much of it is actually very usable and interesting, and things that would have taken forever to do manually and working it out yourself. And it's a true collaboration between yourself and the machine. And the skill here is how to set up a system that will generate interesting and consistently good results without the risk of too many of them being unusable, because that is an element of risk when you're doing generative music, that you lose some of the control, and it's more about choosing how much and what are you willing to lose control over. So before we get going, I just want to give you a little bit of a flavor of what's to come. So before we press play on everything, I would just like to ask you to consider liking this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and the notification bell. YouTube is a pretty anonymous place, and it's one of the few ways for me to know that I am doing something that people find useful and are enjoying. If you don't, please don't hesitate to let me know what you would like to know more about or what you would find interesting in my videos. If you would like to take all of this one step further, please consider checking out my Patreon page. It's only £4 a month, and whatever that converts to in other currencies. And you only need to do it for 1 month if you want to. And as a thank you, you will have loads of downloads, sample libraries, Max for Live devices, project files, etc. from all my previous videos. And this is not an exception. You will be able to download the project file. You will be able to download all the sounds that we're using in here. You can use them in any way you like, as well as the Max for Live devices that I may have built from scratch or ones that I have modified. It would mean loads to me if you would be able to support me. So I would like to say thank you in advance. But I think it's about time that we get going. We explored a few different techniques in the last video of how to generate our beats. I have decided for this one, I'm just going to proceed the one where we are using grids, which is a Max for Live device. That is free to download. I have not built it. It's based on the Grids Eurorack module made by Mutable Instruments. Even if you haven't seen the previous episode, you can probably still follow along here, and it might give you some interesting ideas. But if you want to look at the actual pattern generation more, then I'll recommend you to check out the previous video. All right, so I'm going to stick to the same format. You can obviously expand or reduce this as you like, but I'm going to stick with the categories that we're going to have some kicks, and we're going to have some snares or snare-ish things, and we're going to have some hi-hats, and we're going to have some other percussive sounds. And to expand this, we are going to need loads of sounds, lots and lots and lots of different ones, just to be able to get us lots of different results. So if I go into the kick track here. We got this set up as per the previous video, where we got the grids that generates the pattern. This one we don't need anymore. We also got the Random Map 7, which is the custom Maxwell Live device that I have, which is a little bit like the expression control, but it requires you to click trigger, and whenever time you click that, it changes the beat, and in this case the kick drum. So we need to add some more diverse samples into this, and there's a few things that you can do. We are going to explore some different alternatives. A quick one is to take a sampler, drag it in there, and we need lots of different sounds. So I'm going to open up my sound library of the friendly passenger sounds, and I got lots and lots and lots of kicks. I am going to first take a fairly recent library that I made, which I think is interesting. I've got an old Mackie mixing console, the 1604. It's not the VLZ model, which means that the original one, that's the one a lot of the older techno artists used, and it just adds something magical to your sound. I don't know what it is. It's a little bit lo-fi, it's a little bit dusty, it's nice. So I'm going to drag all these samples in this library into here. So, and then I want to map them not across the keyboard. I'm going to use cell, and then we distribute that across the chain selector. So if I drag this, basically it you can scrub through the different samples, and there's another few things we want to do with this sampler. We want that to be one voice because we don't want to make chords with kicks. We want the decay to be a bit longer so the kicks ring out, and also we don't want the keyboard to affect the cutoff of the filter. Did I turn scale off on all of them? Scale. Which means basically no matter which key you press, you are always going to get the native pitch. So we've got a whole bunch of samples there. Then we want to map this to the macro knob. So if we right click that, oh, we need to put this in a group first. Click the sampler and hit Command G, or I suppose Control G on a PC. Go to the selector, and now we should be able to touch this to the macro knob here. So now we can turn that a bit more convenient. Okay, so we have a bunch of samples. Let's do another library. We go and we click on that button so we can see the different chains. We've got one chain here at the moment, which is the samples that we've just put in. We want to have a separate chain, so we want another sampler, and we just solo that, so we don't want the samples we've just loaded into play because that would be loud. And then we can take here are some bunch of other kicks that I have generated. If you're interested in generating your own samples, it's super quick and super interesting process to do in Ableton. I have made some videos on that in the past. I'll put them links in the description if you want to create your own sample libraries. You might have loads of samples yourself, or if you subscribe to my Patreon, you will be able to download these sounds too, along with lots of other ones that I have shared in the past. All right, so the same process with this. We just want a bit of variety here. So we click on the chain selector. We want to distribute them equally. Go into filter global, set that to mono, just one voice at a time. We don't want the keyboard to affect the filter, and we don't want these to scale. and we also want the longer decay, and we can also right click that to map that to the same macro knob. Okay, fine. So now we got two massive sample libraries that is manipulated by this. And let's make another chain, but we want something else. Maybe we even want to have we go into instrument, sample synth, and we want kick. So you go under drum synth. This is a Max for Live device that comes with Ableton that makes pretty decent kick drums, I have to say. And we want to manipulate that with the expression control. I'm using my own version of the expression control here. You can use the regular one if you want to. This one just has these labels where you can type in what this is relating to, because if you use a lot of these, it gets messy very quickly. But this particular expression control is only going to relate to this kick, so I'm not going to bother with that now. So I am going to make this randomize a few different things. We may want the decay not entirely 0, but also maybe not entirely 100. I like to tune the kick down a bit. Obviously you can go in and tune it to your track or whatever it is that you want. The overtone is pretty harsh as well. Okay, and then maybe we need another chain. I have made my own little kick synthesizer again. Go and check out, I'll put the link in the description, my previous videos where I've made my own little kick generator. Pretty astonishingly big, but I've forgotten to set that to mono, which I want to. And for this one, we might want to have a bit of expression control as well, so we get a bit of variety here. And I think that would be interesting because I think it's got a sinoid saturator on there. So if we can do the time, maybe, not the tone. Oh yeah, maybe tone as well, and time. And time, we don't want that to be 0, but we don't want it to be 100. Okay, getting a variety of kicks out of there. All right, I think the kick channel is done, almost. So now we got all these channels, and if I turn that off to solo, now we got all these 4 channels playing at the same time. Pretty messy, we don't want that. So let's select them all, click chain, drag them all out, distribute equally, and then we can use our random map 7 thing here that I introduced in the last video, which is a bit like the expression control, but it's just for randomization, and it doesn't take a key press. As in a MIDI note, it requires you to click this trigger button, which you can map, obviously. At the moment it's set to control the grids, but here we are going to set it to control which of these 4 chains you will be playing. So we set that chain selector, and then the other one we want to change macro knob, which is the sample selector. So when I hit that button, it's going to generate a new drum pattern, a new kick pattern. It's also going to pick one of these kick drum libraries that we've chosen, and if it picks one of the ones with the samples, it will pick a sample at random. So let's just try this. So if we play this now, if I hit that button, okay, some of those samples sound maybe a little bit static compared to those more animated, synthesized ones. Of course, you can go in and use expression control or some other LFOs and other things to modulate them to make them come alive a bit more. There's also going to be a part 3 to this video series where we're going to look at effects and how you can modulate them to make this even more rich and complex, and that's definitely going to make those samples come alive. But let's say that we are done with the kicks for now, and we're going to do the same thing with the snares, and we are going to make, let's just pick a, I think of snares and claps living in the same territory. They can work nice together as well. I have made, in a previous video, I made a clap synthesizing thing. Let me see, where do we have things? Presets. This thing here. Let's do trigger that channel. This thing that generates claps. And we got this. Let's put that clap machine in a group like we did with the other ones. This expression control we're not using for anything, so I'm just going to hijack that and use that for this clap machine. And I've set that up with lots of macro knobs that I've set up here. Yes, as mentioned, this is, oh, not the clap machine. We want the expression control here. As mentioned, in a previous video, I show you how to build your own clap synth. Actually, let's remove those. And let's use one of the trigger map 7 things instead. Which is an audio effect, very similar, but we might not want every single clap whenever it plays to be different, but we might want to be able to randomize the when you let the system generate a new pattern for you, that it just makes a new clap. Interesting. That makes me think that I should probably introduce a new Max for Live device that I have done, which is one-to-many trigger mapper. So again, it works a bit like this one. It hits a trigger, but you can send this trigger to multiple places. So we can send it to that trigger. So whenever I click this, for example, it's going to generate a new grids pattern, but we can also set that to generate a new clap sound. Okay, so we got our clap machine in there, and we got that in a chain already. So let's do, I think I have got set up already previously something that I have prepared in the past. Oh no, we need to be in the user library and presets, where I have set up a bank of snare drums. Or yes, I think it's some clappy sounds in there as well. So we can set this one to generate a sample. do we have any form of other snare thing that I could use? That's the snare bank. I got some snare synthesis thing here. Probably sounds pretty horrid, but let's just see. I can't remember. It's a long time since I made that one. What does this actually do? No, it's pretty horrid. Let's just do these two. That's fine. There. Maybe I should do another tutorial on how to make a proper snare synthesis thing, because that sounded pretty ropey. All right, so we got our clap machine and we got our sample library with snares. And again, this one here, we want that to randomize which one it picks. So okay, some of them are a bit weird. That's fine. Cool. Hi-hat. Same thing. Same thing. Same thing. Let's see here. We can just do... I think I generated some really good hi-hats recently. Lots of them. While we are on the topic of percussion sounds, I think if you think about the frequency spectrum and that you need different sounds to fulfill different parts of this, so you can see the kick drum as sitting at the bottom of this, and then depending on if you're using some toms, they might come above that, and then you get, or in somewhere they overlap a bit, of course. You get the claps and the snares, and then some other percussion sounds and like tambourines and stuff, and then you might get some very sharp hi-hats at the top. I think that's an interesting way of thinking about it. I forgot to say that this one affects the grids for our little hi-hats. Grids. And then we are going to pick our samples. Let's find our sample library. Where are our samples? Here, yeah, we got our TFP library, and here we got loads of hi-hats, hi-hat type sounds. Just to be sure, because, oh yeah, tone scale off. Just to be sure, I would also like to add a high pass filter, because I can't remember how good I was at making sure that the hi-hats don't create all that low end. Because when you're dealing with noise is can be the entire spectrum. Scale 0. What am I doing? Ah, these samples I haven't spotted. My snares, they are scaled. We don't want that. That's what we want. Okay, here we are at the hi-hat, so we need to trigger that. Gosh, that's sharp. One thing we definitely want to do with this, just to make them a bit more animated, is to use an expression control. And then modulate the decay time for these guys, because otherwise it will sound very static. So maybe not quite 0, maybe not quite 100. And then we obviously need to distribute these across the selector, and we'll put this in a group and selector. Map that to a macro here. And we want to randomize that here as well. Boom, boom. And that's a sample selector. And maybe just to have a bit of variety, maybe we just quickly make a little hi-hat maker. I am just going to do a very rudimentary one by taking the operator, and let's make a channel with that. We solo that, set that to white noise, high pass. Voila, hi-hat done. And maybe we want to do that as a... No, that's boring. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, you saw quickly how to make your own hi-hats there. I think if it's 50% chance we get that one, I think there's going to be more variety just picking a different sample. Okay, for percussion, something I've prepared earlier as well. I'll explain to you what I have done. It's not in samples, it's in presets, instruments, percussion. We got our percussion package, and what that consists of is nested groups. This one takes a bit of time to load, but basically I don't know how many banks I have, but I have loads of banks of different samples. Sample libraries with 128 in each. So yeah, it picks a library and then it manipulates them a bit just to create a little bit of variation. So I think we're sort of done. Now it's just time to generate stuff. And I showed you that device that I put on, was it the kick? No, was it the snare? Yes, this one-to-many trigger mapper. I'm going to make a new MIDI channel which sits outside that group, which we are just going to call, let's call it init, for initiating our pattern. And then we can do one-to-many trigger mapper. Do you want it as an audio device maybe? I made them as both, depending on if you want to sit before or after the MIDI instruments. I don't know why that's preset still in there. I probably made a mistake saving it with the user tag in there. We don't want that. I just want to talk a little bit about this device because I just went through it quickly. I've made these things so you can type in your own tags, even though you're mapping them. It works like the other one where you get a little bit of an indication, but the purpose of this is just to route signals around your system. So I'm putting that on this channel. So whenever I trigger this, I can obviously send channels. So what we're going to do basically, each of these will go into the kick, one going to the snare, one to the hi-hat, and one to the percussion, and just randomize everything. And I think I foolishly removed from the last project the randomizing of the tempo of the track. So we're going to put that in as well. So we got the user tags where you can just type in a little note of what each of these are randomizing. You can put a little title in here for this one. So this could be init project, for example. User comments. You can also type something in here for reset the entire project with new sounds and rhythms. So let's do this. We go in and map that to the trigger of that one. We want to, so that's the reset kick, and we want to reset snare, reset hi-hat, and reset percussion, and then also random tempo, which we'll get to in a moment. Okay, map that to the snare. And we map that to the hi-hat. Boom. And the percussion. Boom. Did I do the right thing with the snare? I'm just going to redo that one just to be sure. Oh, percussion. That's what we want to do. Snare. I'm going to redo that one. Snare, because we want to trigger that because this one then passes it on both pressing this button and also pausing. All right, here's a practical example of where I didn't type in what this was doing. Reset pattern. Select sample. But I also used something else over here. What was that? I think there was something in the reason for having those columns, super important. Was it for this? I can't remember what I... Okay, it's prime example. I will realize it in a moment what it was that thing was pressing. I mapped it to something else. I will have to watch the video again to remind myself. Oh, and yes, this is grids, 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 and this is samples select, and this is chain selector. Okay. And then we need to introduce the tempo again, the TFP tempo. I talk more about this in a specific video again. I'll put loads of links in the description. It's a little Max for Live device that allows you to automate the tempo. There is a bit of, I don't know if it's a bug or whatever it is. It is a, if you just take a expression control or something and map that to the tempo, it doesn't stop you from doing that, but the tempo doesn't update until you unmap it or remove the entire device. But this one, you can either just change the tempo by dragging this, or I've made a little randomization tool that you can use something. You can either click on it or map something to it, and they will randomize the tempo, and you can set a range down here so you don't get out of hand. So I think generally between 80 and 180 is fairly palatable. So let's play this. Why does the percussion not work? Okay, problem solved. I had a stupid little envelope Max for Live device in there that stopped the percussion from playing. So if we just ignore that little cut and interlude, then we'll be fine. I'm going to turn the kick down a bit because it's too low. So now we should be able to generate beats till the cows come home. One more thing about this device that I forgot to say, it's the chance here. So it's by default set to 100%, which means that when I press trigger, it's 100% chance that the trigger will be sent to reset kick, blah, blah, blah. But you can dial that down. And that's also a nice tool when you're making generative music, that you can choose how likely change is. And before we wrap up today, I mentioned earlier that next time we are going to look at how to add effects to this, because that's the next step of adding more complexity and things. But you've already heard that whenever you press that trigger button here, you're generating quite varied beats and they sound a bit dry. So I'm just going to chuck some effects in here, not thinking too much, but then we're going to look at how we can refine them. And I hope that video is going to be out in about a week's time. So make sure to check back then. But I'm just going to play around a little bit here with just not thinking too much. It's not, next week's going to be a bit more elaborate. We got one echo, we got two echoes now. just a little sneak peek here. A very rudimentary sneak peek. We do a Prandom Map 7 on our init track, and I'm probably going to mess this up. We're just going to randomize some of these effects. So we've just got a grain delay, and then we have the other delay here, which we want unsynced, and then I think that, yes, that's got a reverb in it as well. And let's put the drum bus after all that, and we're also going to put in a... This is pure self-indulgence, just to make something interesting quickly, but it's going to be a bit more organized next week. Let's see. And an OTT, everything sounds a little bit more punchy with a little bit of OTT, but remember, kids, not too much. And then did we map everything we wanted to map there? Maybe the dry, wet. And then there's this, just reset effects, map to trigger. So again, when we click that, we're just going to get a whole bunch of new effects. Where's the other reverb? It's just of course, we had the reverb in the delay thing. That's what's making it really crazy, and we don't want that to be too much, I think. What an IDM fest this is, isn't it? Gosh, I could sit and do that for way too long. And now I didn't spend any time on the effects, but I think you can get a sense of where this is going. And I think it's interesting how versatile, like how varied the results actually are in the end. I hope you found this interesting. Next episode will be about the effects and how you can manipulate them in different ways. Please subscribe, say hello, thumbs up, get in touch, maybe even consider sponsoring me on Patreon. I would love you. And I hope to make some more videos. Maybe we will be going on to melodies next after we've done a bit of percussion. And eventually, maybe just making an entire complex track with arrangements, different sections, everything using generative methods. All right, go out there and be creative. Thank you. See you again next time.